The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time this cycle, and Ambassador Zekthara could feel the tension radiating from every species present in the vast crystalline chamber. The holographic displays showed the same troubling data that had kept the Council's xenobiologists awake for weeks, an unknown signal emanating from a previously uncharted system in the outer spiral arm. Zekthara's 4 eyes tracked across the assembled delegates, noting the nervous twitching of antennae, the rapid color changes of chromatophore-bearing species, and the anxious clicking of mandibles. The Galactic Council had faced many mysteries in its 10,000-year history, but this was different. The signal wasn't just unknown, it was impossible. The mathematical sequences embedded in the transmission, announced Dr. Vexini, the Council's chief xenolinguist, suggest a level of technological sophistication that should not exist in that region of space. Our surveys indicated only primitive stellar formations and unstable planetary systems. High Counselor Mordak, whose species had discovered faster-than-light travel when most others were still developing agriculture, leaned forward on his floating platform. His translator rendered his subsonic rumbles into the common tone. You're suggesting that a pre-contact civilization has developed technology that rivals our own? Not rivals, Vexini corrected, her crystalline form shifting to a deep amber hue that indicated extreme concern. Exceeds. The energy signatures we're detecting should require at least 3 Type 2 civilizations working in concert. The system shows no signs of Dyson sphere construction or stellar engineering projects. Yet the power output suggests they're harvesting energy at rates we've never observed. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds as dozens of species attempted to speak simultaneously. Zekthara's people, the Kethmari, had evolved from predatory pack hunters, and his instinct screamed that something was fundamentally wrong with this situation. His species had learned long ago that when prey appeared too easy or when circumstances seemed too convenient, it usually meant you were actually the one being hunted. Order! Mordak's voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. We will approach this systematically. Dr. Vexini, what can you tell us about the contents of these transmissions? The xenolinguist's form shifted to display a 3-dimensional hologram of complex waveforms. The signals contain what appears to be music, mathematical proofs, scientific data, and she paused, her crystalline structure flickering uncertainly. What can only be described as entertainment broadcasts. Fiction, perhaps, though the content is disturbing. Disturbing how? Inquired Ambassador Yithala of the Seraphim Collective, her ethereal voice carrying harmonics that made several other species visibly uncomfortable. The fictional scenarios consistently involve conflict resolution through violence. The mathematical models suggest the creators of these transmissions view aggression not as a last resort, but as a primary problem-solving methodology. More concerning, their entertainment seems to celebrate individual achievement over collective harmony. A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. Every species in the Galactic Council had evolved past such primitive social structures millennia ago. Even the most recently contacted civilizations understood that individual ambition led only to extinction. The galaxy was too vast and too dangerous for species that couldn't subordinate personal desires to collective survival. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Next Area of the Botanical Commonwealth, his root-like appendages rustling with what his people expressed as hope. These beings are simply young. We've encountered primitive cultures before. They could be educated, guided toward proper social evolution. Zekthara's predator instincts disagreed. Something about the signal patterns reminded him of the hunting songs his ancestors had used to coordinate attacks on creatures much larger than themselves. There was a rhythm to the transmissions, a purposefulness that spoke of intelligence far more sophisticated than the content might suggest. The energy signatures tell a different story, Dr. Vexini continued. These beings have achieved what we classify as impossible efficiency in their power generation. They're converting matter to energy at rates that should require antimatter containment technology we've only theorized about. Yet the spectral analysis shows no evidence of the exotic materials such technology would require. Could they be using stellar cores directly? Asked Ambassador Quintera, her insectoid form clicking nervously. That's what we initially assumed, but the energy patterns don't match stellar harvesting. It's almost as if Vexini paused again, her form cycling through colors that indicated deep confusion. It's as if they're using their own star, but not in any way we understand. High Counselor Mordak's expression grew grave. Show us the system. The chamber's central hologram shifted to display a three-dimensional map of the unknown system. A single yellow star, smaller than most in the region, sat at the center. 9 planetary bodies orbited at various distances, but only one showed the electromagnetic signatures of advanced civilization. The third planet, Vexini explained, manipulating the display to focus on a blue-green world. 71% water, with land masses distributed across multiple continents. Atmospheric composition, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, with trace gases. The oxygen concentration alone should have told us this was an impossible world. Zekthara felt his hunting instincts sharpen. Impossible how? Pure oxygen is one of the most corrosive substances in the galaxy. No intelligent life should be able to evolve in an atmosphere where every breath is slowly oxidizing their cellular structure. It's like trying to evolve while swimming in acid. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Species across the galaxy had evolved in carefully balanced atmospheric conditions. Most required complex life support systems just to visit worlds with trace amounts of free oxygen. The idea of creatures that not only survived but thrived in such an environment was beyond their understanding. There's more, Vexini continued, her form now a deep red that indicated alarm. The planet shows signs of massive ecological damage that should have caused planetary extinction events. Atmospheric pollution, deforestation, oceanic acidification, and radiation signatures consistent with nuclear weapons deployment. Yet life not only continues, but appears to be flourishing. Ambassador Yithala's harmonic voice carried a note of disbelief. They survived nuclear warfare. Not just survived. The radiation signatures suggest hundreds of detonations over the past century. Yet their civilization shows continued growth and development. It's as if they treated nuclear holocaust as merely another environmental challenge to overcome. The chamber fell silent. Every species present had faced extinction-level events in their evolutionary history. For most, it had taken millions of years and careful guidance from older civilizations to develop the wisdom necessary for survival. The idea of creatures that could casually survive planetary devastation was deeply unsettling. Counselor Nextheri's roots rustled with what could only be described as fear. What are you suggesting, Dr. Vexini? That these beings are naturally resistant to planetary destruction? I'm suggesting, the xenolinguist replied, her form now cycling through colors that indicated she was about to present information she found personally terrifying, that planetary destruction might be their natural habitat. The implications crashed over the assembly like a tidal wave. Throughout the galaxy, intelligent life had evolved on garden worlds, carefully balanced ecosystems where evolution proceeded gradually and peacefully. Species learned cooperation because their environments demanded it. Those that didn't learn died out during the first climate change or asteroid impact. But what if intelligence could evolve under different conditions? What if there were worlds so hostile that only the most adaptable, aggressive, and individually capable creatures could survive? What if cooperation wasn't learned through gentle necessity, but forged in the fires of constant struggle against extinction? We need more information, Mordak declared. Dr. Vexini, can you decode more of their transmissions? Some of it, yes. Their mathematical systems are elegant, actually superior to our own in several ways. Their scientific data suggests they've developed technologies we haven't even theorized about. But the cultural content, she paused, it's extremely difficult for our psychological models to process. Explain. Their fictional works consistently involve scenarios where small groups or even individuals overcome overwhelming odds through personal determination and creative violence. They seem to believe that impossible situations are simply problems that haven't been solved yet. More disturbing, they appear to view death not as the ultimate failure, but as an acceptable cost for achieving objectives. Zekthara's four eyes widened. His people were predators, but even they understood that individual death meant the loss of irreplaceable knowledge and genetic diversity. No rational species would consider individual lives expendable. Furthermore, Vexini continued, their entertainment consistently portrays their own species overcoming more technologically advanced opponents through what they call ingenuity and determination. It's as if they expect to be outgunned and outmaneuvered as a normal state of existence. Ambassador Quintera's mandibles clicked rapidly. They're planning for war before they've even made contact? That's just it, Vexini replied. I don't think they're planning anything. I think this is simply how they think. They seem to approach every problem as if it were a life-or-death struggle requiring maximum effort and creative solutions. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Species that had known peace for millennia were trying to understand a mindset that seemed fundamentally alien to every principle of galactic civilization. There's something else, Vexini said, her form now a stark white that indicated she was about to reveal something that challenged her fundamental understanding of reality. Their transmissions include what appears to be historical documentation. If the translations are correct, their species has never experienced global peace. They've been in a state of constant warfare with themselves for their entire recorded history. The silence that followed was profound. Every species in the Council had gone through aggressive phases during their evolution, but those were brief periods that ended once they achieved spaceflight or made contact with galactic civilization. The idea of creatures that had maintained warfare as a constant state for thousands of years was beyond their comprehension. How are they not extinct? Whispered Ambassador Yathala. That's the question that's been keeping our xenopsychology teams awake, Vexini replied. Based on our models, species that maintain constant internal conflict should destroy themselves within a few hundred years of developing nuclear weapons. These beings have had nuclear weapons for almost a century and show no signs of slowing down. High Counselor Mordak's expression had grown increasingly grave as the briefing progressed. Dr. Vexini, in your professional opinion, what kind of civilization are we dealing with? The xenolinguist's form cycled through several colors before settling on a deep purple that indicated profound uncertainty. High Counselor, I believe we may have encountered something that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of evolutionary psychology and galactic development patterns. A species that has evolved not just to survive in impossible conditions, but to thrive in them. They appear to view challenges that would destroy most civilizations as normal environmental factors. Are they a threat? Mordak asked directly. High Counselor, Vexini replied, I don't think they know they're supposed to be threatening. Based on their transmissions, they seem genuinely curious about the galaxy and eager to make contact with other intelligent life. But their definition of peaceful contact includes detailed documentation of their military capabilities and what they call defensive preparations. Zekthara's predator instincts were now screaming warnings. They're advertising their weapons as a greeting? Not advertising, Vexini corrected. From what I can determine, they consider it polite to let potential allies know exactly what kind of support they can provide in case of trouble. They seem to assume that any intelligent species they meet will eventually face some kind of existential threat and want to establish their utility as allies immediately. The implications were staggering. These beings didn't just expect conflict. They were already planning how to help species they hadn't even met yet survive whatever apocalypse might be heading their way. Recommendation? Mordak asked the assembly. The debate that followed lasted for hours, with species arguing for everything from immediate contact to complete avoidance. Finally, Zekthara stood to address the chamber. Fellow counselors, he began, his translator rendering his pack-hunting vocalizations into the common tongue. My people evolved as predators. We understand that the galaxy contains creatures that don't think like we do. But we also understand something else. When you encounter something that shouldn't exist according to your understanding of the world, it usually means your understanding is incomplete. He gestured toward the hologram of the impossible blue planet. These beings have achieved things we thought impossible. They've survived in conditions we consider lethal. They've maintained a civilization through challenges that should have destroyed them. Perhaps instead of asking whether they're a threat, we should be asking what they know that we don't. The chamber considered this in silence. I propose, Zekthara continued, that we send a contact delegation, but not to judge them by our standards or to offer guidance. To learn. Because if there are creatures in this galaxy that can casually survive planetary destruction and treat impossible challenges as normal problems to solve, we may need to understand their methods. High Counselor Mordak nodded slowly. The Kethmari makes a compelling argument. These beings may represent an entirely new paradigm of intelligence. Dr. Vexini prepare a contact protocol. But, he paused, looking around the chamber, let's make sure our delegation understands they're not going to meet another Garden World civilization. As the session ended, and the delegates began filing out, Zekthara remained staring at the hologram of the impossible world. His instincts told him they were about to encounter something that would change their understanding of what intelligent life could be. Whether that change would be beneficial or catastrophic remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. The GCS Harmony's Dawn had been traveling for 2 standard months toward the impossible world, and Captain Velterra was beginning to understand why the Council had selected her ship for this mission. The Harmony's Dawn wasn't just a diplomatic vessel. It was a mobile research station crewed by some of the galaxy's most adaptable species and equipped with enough defensive capabilities to handle contact with potentially hostile, unknown civilizations. What they hadn't expected was to receive a transmission from the target system, while still 3 light-years away. Captain, Communications Officer Pithero called from her station, her avian features ruffled with excitement and concern. We're receiving a directed transmission. It appears to be specifically targeting our ship. Velterra felt her gill slits flutter with anxiety. Her people, the Aquari, had evolved in the deep oceans of their homeworld, where survival often depended on detecting threats long before they became visible. Right now, every instinct she possessed was suggesting that they had already been noticed by something with capabilities far beyond their understanding. Impossible, muttered Dr. Crixel, the mission's chief Xena specialist. His crystalline form sparked with disbelief. No known technology can detect ships traveling through hyperspace, let alone target communications at specific vessels. Display the transmission, Velterra ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a small chamber with a single occupant. The being was bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall, with pale skin, sparse fur on the top of its head, and only 2 eyes positioned on the front of its face, a predator's configuration that made several crew members unconsciously step backward. But what struck Velterra most was the creature's posture. It sat relaxed in what appeared to be a simple chair, its hands, only 5 digits each, she noted with fascination, folded calmly in its lap. Despite being the first member of its species to make contact with alien life, it showed no signs of fear, excitement, or even surprise. Greetings, the being said in a pleasant, measured voice. The universal translator processed the language instantly, though Velterra noticed it struggled with several concepts that seemed to have no galactic equivalents. I'm Dr. Sarah Chun, currently serving as Earth's head of extraterrestrial contact protocols. Welcome to our neighborhood. The casual tone sent ripples of shock through the bridge. Every first contact scenario in galactic history had involved elaborate ceremonies, formal protocols, and careful relationship building over years or even decades. This creature was greeting them as if they were neighbors dropping by for a visit. We detected your approach approximately 36 hours ago, Dr. Chun continued, and wanted to reach out before you arrived to make sure we could facilitate proper communication. We understand this might be surprising, since our technical manual suggests that what we just did should be impossible, but we found that impossible usually just means nobody's figured it out yet. Dr. Crixenel's crystalline form was cycling through colors so rapidly it looked like a strobe light. "Captain," he whispered, "they detected us in hyperspace. That requires understanding of dimensional mathematics that we've been working on for millennia without success." Furthermore, Dr. Chen said, as if she had heard their conversation, "We want to assure you that our interest in your arrival is entirely peaceful. We've prepared what we hope will be appropriate accommodations for your physiology, though we may need some guidance there, and we're very much looking forward to learning about your civilizations." Velterra noticed the plural. Civilizations. She knows there's more than one species aboard. "That's also impossible," Pithero muttered. "Ship sensors can't distinguish individual species through hull shielding." Dr. Chun smiled, an expression that revealed flat, white teeth, another predator trait. "We realize this might seem rushed by galactic standards, but we're curious creatures by nature, and we've been looking forward to this moment for quite some time. If you're amenable, we'd like to extend an invitation for a small delegation to visit Earth's surface. We've prepared what we believe will be a safe and comfortable environment for initial discussions." The transmission paused, and Dr. Chen's expression grew more serious. "I should probably mention that we've taken the liberty of reviewing the basic principles of galactic civilization from your ship's data broadcasts. We appreciate the framework you've developed for peaceful coexistence, and we want to assure you that we have no intention of disrupting the stability your species have worked so hard to achieve." "They've been monitoring our communications," Security Chief Gorthake growled, his reptilian features showing clear disapproval. "This is already a security breach of the highest order." But Velterra was focused on something else. She said they appreciate the framework we've developed. Past tense, as if they've already decided whether or not to participate in it. Dr. Chen's smile returned, but this time it seemed more knowing. "We understand that our technological capabilities might seem concerning, but please be assured that we consider ourselves potential junior partners in any galactic community. We have a great deal to learn from civilizations with your experience and wisdom." The word junior was translated with a footnote indicating uncertainty. The original concept seemed to contain layers of meaning the universal translator couldn't fully process. "We'll be monitoring for your response," Dr. Chen concluded. "Please take whatever time you need to discuss this among yourselves. We're patient people." Another pause, and her smile became almost predatory. "Well, reasonably patient. We look forward to meeting you." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Analysis," Velterra ordered after a moment. Dr. Crixenel spoke first, his form now a solid amber that indicated extreme concern. "Captain, that being just demonstrated technological capabilities that shouldn't exist. They detected us in hyperspace, analyzed our ship's composition to determine crew species, accessed our communications without triggering any security alerts, and transmitted directly to our position across 3 light-years of space. Furthermore," added Chief Engineer Yixmoth from his environmental pod, "the energy requirements for that transmission should have been detectable by our sensors. We registered no unusual energy emissions from their system." Velterra's gill slits fluttered more rapidly. "Could they have hidden the energy signature?" "Not hidden," Yixmoth replied, his aquatic form rippling with uncertainty. "According to our instruments, that transmission required no energy at all, which is physically impossible." Communications Officer Pithero raised a feathered appendage. "Captain, there's something else. I've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in that transmission. The universal translator worked perfectly, too perfectly. Usually, first contact requires extensive calibration to handle new linguistic concepts. This being's language was translated with complete accuracy on the first attempt. Meaning either they've studied our languages extensively before making contact, or they've somehow optimized their communication specifically for our translation systems. Both possibilities suggest a level of preparation that indicates they've been observing galactic civilization for much longer than we assumed." Security Chief Gorthay K scales were now showing the deep red patterns that indicated his people were preparing for combat. Captain, this is all the hallmarks of a first contact scenario with a technologically superior predator species. I recommend we maintain maximum distance and request backup from the fleet. But Velterra was thinking about something Dr. Chun had said. She mentioned their technical manuals suggest what they did should be impossible. That implies they have theoretical frameworks for technologies they haven't yet developed. And she said impossible usually means nobody's figured out yet. Dr. Crixenal's form brightened slightly. A species that treats theoretical impossibilities as engineering challenges rather than absolute limitations? There's more, Pitheril added, reviewing the transmission data. I've been analyzing her vocal patterns and body language. According to my xenopsychology database, she was completely relaxed during that entire communication. No signs of stress, excitement, or deception. She's either an extremely skilled diplomat, Velterra mused, or making contact with unknown alien species is something she considers routine, Dr. Crixenal finished. Captain, I don't think we're their first contact. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If these beings had already made contact with other species, why hadn't the Galactic Council been informed? And if they hadn't, what kind of civilization would treat first contact with alien life as a routine occurrence? Sir, Pitheril said suddenly, we're receiving another transmission. The screen flickered back to life, this time showing a different human, male, with darker skin and graying fur on his face. He wore what appeared to be some kind of uniform, and behind him, Velterra could see what looked like a command center bustling with activity. Captain Velterra, the human said, pronouncing her name perfectly despite never having heard it before. I'm Admiral Marcus Washington, Earth Defense Command. Dr. Chen asked me to follow up on her invitation with some practical details. Velterra felt her blood chill. They knew her name. They knew her rank. They had somehow accessed her ship's personnel files. First, Admiral Washington continued, let me assure you that your ship and crew are in no danger. We've been monitoring your approach to ensure safe passage through our system's outer defenses, and we're prepared to provide navigation assistance if needed. Outer defenses? Security Chief Gorthay K whispered. We haven't detected any defensive installations. Second, Washington said, we understand that our contact protocols might seem unusual compared to standard galactic procedures. We want you to know that we've studied your civilizational frameworks extensively, and we respect the principles of peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit that guide galactic society. He paused, and his expression grew more serious. However, we also want to be completely honest with you about Earth's unique position. Our planet has faced several extinction-level threats over the past century, and we've developed certain capabilities in response to those challenges. We want to make sure you understand what you're dealing with before we proceed. The screen shifted to show a technical display that made Dr. Crixenal gasp audibly. It was a schematic of Earth's solar system, but overlaid with defensive installations that the Harmony's Dawn sensors had completely failed to detect. These installations are currently dormant, Washington explained, but we wanted you to be aware of their existence as a matter of courtesy. We believe in transparent communication, especially with potential allies. Velterra stared at the display. The defensive network surrounding Earth was more extensive than anything the Galactic Council had ever deployed around their core worlds. And somehow, it had all been invisible to their sensors. Our defensive posture isn't directed at your mission, Washington continued, but rather at certain other challenges our planet faces. We've found that transparency about our capabilities helps prevent misunderstandings later. The display shifted again, showing what appeared to be a peaceful planetary surface with scattered urban centers and vast areas of natural landscape. But now Velterra could see the subtly hidden infrastructure. Mass drivers disguised as communications towers, atmosphere processors hidden in mountain ranges, and what appear to be orbital construction facilities camouflaged as asteroid mining operations. We're sharing this information Washington said, because we believe that honest dialogue begins with honest disclosure. We want you to understand that Earth's defensive capabilities exist not because we're aggressive, but because we've learned that in an uncertain galaxy, being prepared for the unexpected is simply good sense. The transmission paused, and Washington's expression became almost paternal. We realize this might seem overwhelming, but please understand that everything you're seeing was developed in response to natural disasters, not as preparation for war. It's just that on Earth, the line between natural disaster and existential threat is often a matter of perspective. Dr. Crixenel was now flickering so rapidly between colors that Velterra worried he might overload his photonic matrix. "Captain," he whispered, "they're describing planetary-scale engineering projects as disaster preparedness. What kind of disasters require that level of response?" Washington seemed to hear the question. "Dr. Crixenel, I understand your concern. Earth has experienced several mass extinction events throughout its history. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, ice ages, and more recently, near misses with solar flares, gamma-ray bursts, and what we classified as potentially hostile extrasolar phenomena. We've learned to be proactive about planetary defense." "He knows my name, too," Dr. Crixenel whispered in amazement. "Our invitation stands," Washington concluded. "We're prepared to receive a diplomatic delegation at your convenience, and we're very much looking forward to learning about galactic civilization from experienced members like yourselves. We hope you'll find Earth's perspective interesting." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in stunned silence. "Captain," Security Chief Gorthicay said slowly, "they just described preparations for threats that most species never even consider. Gamma-ray bursts? Solar flares? Those are theoretical dangers at best." "Not theoretical," Velterra replied quietly. "They said near misses. They've actually experienced these events." Dr. Crixenel's form finally stabilized to a deep blue that indicated he was processing information that challenged his fundamental understanding of reality. "Captain, they're treating cosmic-scale disasters as routine environmental hazards. That's not just unusual. That's impossible according to everything we know about planetary development. And yet," Velterra pointed out, "they're here, they're thriving, and they've developed technologies that shouldn't exist." Chief Engineer Yixmoth rippled with what his people expressed as awe. "Captain, I've been analyzing the energy signatures from their transmissions. They're not using any power source we can identify. It's as if they've learned to manipulate fundamental forces we don't even have names for." Velterra stared at the display, showing Earth's hidden defenses. Everything about this situation challenged her understanding of how civilizations developed. According to galactic history, species that faced repeated existential threats either died out or learned to avoid such challenges through careful planetary management and galactic cooperation. But what if there were worlds where existential threats were unavoidable? What if there were species that had learned to survive not by avoiding danger, but by becoming more dangerous than anything the universe could throw at them? "Set course for Earth," she ordered finally. "Captain, Gorta questioned. Chief, we came here to learn about something impossible. These beings have achieved things our best theories say can't be done. They've survived challenges that should have destroyed them, and they're inviting us to learn how they did it." She looked around at her crew. "I don't think we can afford to pass up this opportunity." As the Harmony's Dawn adjusted course toward Earth, Velterra couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something that would change the galaxy forever. Whether that change would be beneficial or catastrophic remained to be seen. But one thing was becoming clear. Humanity was unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The moment Captain Velterra's delegation materialized on Earth's surface, she knew they had made a fundamental error in their understanding of what constituted a safe environment. The human transportation technology had worked flawlessly, another impossibility, since matter transportation required energy expenditures that should have been visible from orbit. But what struck her immediately wasn't the technology, it was the air itself. Every breath felt like inhaling liquid fire. The oxygen concentration that had seemed merely dangerous in their briefings now revealed itself as actively hostile to non-adapted life. Within seconds, her emergency atmospheric converter had activated, but she could see her team struggling with the environmental assault that humans apparently considered normal. "Welcome to Earth," said Dr. Sarah Chun, approaching with the casual stride of someone walking through a garden rather than an environment that should have been lethal to her species. "I hope the transportation wasn't too disorienting. We've found that most species prefer molecular displacement to shuttle travel, though we're still working on optimizing the process for non-human physiology." Velterra tried to respond, but found herself momentarily speechless. Molecular displacement was theoretical technology that existed only in the most advanced research papers. The energy requirements alone should have required the output of a small star. Yet these beings discussed it as casually as choosing between walking and riding. "Dr. Chun," she managed finally, "how long has your species possessed matter transportation?" "Oh, about 15 years for practical applications," Chun replied, gesturing for them to follow her across what appeared to be a simple courtyard, but which Velterra's enhanced sensors revealed to be subtly armored and embedded with technology her equipment couldn't identify. Though the theoretical framework has been around for about 30 years. "We had to develop it after the Brisbane event." "The Brisbane event?" asked Dr. Crixonell, his crystalline form now shimmering with a persistent amber that indicated his systems were struggling to process their surroundings. "Asteroid impact in 2019, Chun said matter-of-factly. 7 kilometers in diameter, gave us about 48 hours warning. We needed a way to evacuate 20 million people from the impact zone faster than conventional transportation would allow." She paused. "That was when we realized that most of our assumptions about physical limitations were really just engineering challenges we hadn't solved yet." The casual mention of a 7-kilometer asteroid impact made Velterra's gill slits flutter with shock. Such an event would have been classified as a planetary extinction scenario. Most civilizations would have considered themselves fortunate to survive such an impact. Humans apparently treated it as a traffic management problem. "How many casualties?" Security Chief Gorthay K. asked, his scales showing the deep purple that indicated his people were trying to process information that didn't fit their psychological frameworks. "Fewer than 1,000, Chun replied. "Most of those were people who refused evacuation for various personal reasons. We've since improved our emergency protocols to account for individual choice in crisis situations." Communications Officer Pitheral's feathers were rustling continuously with agitation. "Dr. Chun, you're describing the survival of a mass extinction event as if it were a minor emergency response exercise." Chun stopped walking and turned to face the group, her expression showing what Velterra was beginning to recognize as a uniquely human combination of confusion and patience. "I'm sorry. I think I may be misunderstanding your perspective. Are asteroid impacts considered unusual in galactic civilization?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Velterra realized they had encountered something that challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic society. Most species evolved on stable worlds where major catastrophes were rare enough to be considered anomalous. The entire structure of galactic civilization was built on the assumption that intelligent life required predictable, manageable environments. "Dr. Chun," she said carefully, "most species consider asteroid impacts to be extinction-level events that occur perhaps once every few million years. They're not routine." Chin's expression shifted to what Velterra was learning to recognize as human surprise. "Oh, that would explain some of the psychological profiles in your cultural databases. Earth experiences significant impact events roughly every 60 to 80,000 years, with minor ones happening several times per millennium. We've always assumed that was normal for inhabited worlds." Dr. Crixonell's form was now cycling rapidly through colors that indicated he was recalibrating his entire understanding of planetary development. "Dr. Chun, how has your species achieved technological development under such conditions? Repeated catastrophic events should interrupt technological progress, and prevent the accumulation of knowledge necessary for advanced civilization. That's an interesting point, Chen replied, resuming their walk toward what appeared to be a large but unremarkable building. We found that catastrophic events actually accelerate technological development in most cases. Nothing motivates innovation quite like immediate necessity. She gestured to a series of structures that Velterra's sensors indicated were far more complex than their simple appearances suggested. Most of our major technological breakthroughs have come directly from addressing existential threats. Spaceflight was developed partly to provide early warning systems for cosmic impacts. Advanced material science came from needing structures that could survive earthquakes, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions. Energy technology advanced rapidly when we realized that our planet's climate was inherently unstable. But the social disruption, Pithero protested. How do you maintain cultural continuity and knowledge preservation when facing repeated civilizational threats? Chun smiled, and Velterra was beginning to understand that human smiles often indicated that they found galactic assumptions amusing rather than threatening. We learned early that knowledge preservation requires redundancy and adaptability. We don't just store information, we distribute it, embed it in multiple formats, and train our populations to recreate essential technologies from basic principles if necessary. They entered the building, and Velterra immediately noticed that what appeared to be a simple conference facility was actually a hardened installation capable of surviving almost any conceivable disaster. The walls looked decorative, but registered on her sensors as meter-thick composite armor. The furniture appeared comfortable, but was clearly designed to be rapidly convertible to emergency equipment. We've prepared what we hope will be an appropriate meeting space, Chun said, leading them into a chamber that managed to be both welcoming and subtly fortified. Admiral Washington will be joining us shortly, along with some of our technical specialists. We're very interested in learning about galactic civilization and how Earth might contribute to the broader community. As they settled into chairs that automatically adjusted to each species' physiology, another casual display of advanced technology, Velterra found herself struggling with a growing realization. Everything they had observed suggested that humanity had developed not despite facing repeated existential threats, but because of them. Dr. Chun, she said carefully, when your species began receiving our transmissions, what was your initial assessment of galactic civilization? Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Honestly, we were impressed by the stability and longevity you've achieved, but somewhat concerned about what appeared to be limited adaptability to unexpected challenges. Most galactic species seem to have evolved in remarkably stable conditions, which has produced sophisticated but somewhat specialized civilizations. Specialized how? Well, your technologies are clearly advanced, but they seem optimized for known conditions rather than unknown variables. Your social structures promote harmony and cooperation, which is admirable, but they seem to assume that future challenges will be similar to past ones. Admiral Washington entered the chamber at that moment, accompanied by two other humans and something that made Velterra's predator instinct scream warnings. The additional presence wasn't threatening in any obvious way, but there was something about its movement patterns that suggested capabilities far beyond what any biological organism should possess. Captain Velterra, Washington said warmly, "Thank you for accepting our invitation. I hope Earth has been accommodating so far." "Admiral," she replied, trying not to stare at the figure that had accompanied him. "Your world has been educational. I'm curious about your companion." Washington followed her gaze and smiled. "Ah, this is AI-7, one of our synthetic intelligence systems. We thought it might be useful to have multiple perspectives in our discussions." The artificial intelligence stepped forward with movements that were perfectly human and completely wrong at the same time. "Greetings, Captain Velterra. I represent what humans call their digital descendants. Artificial minds created to assist with challenges that require computational resources beyond biological capabilities." Dr. Crixenael's form went completely white. "Admiral, Your species has created artificial intelligence. The risks are significant. AI-7 agreed pleasantly, which is why we developed extensive safeguards, ethical frameworks, and mutual cooperation agreements before implementing large-scale AI systems. Humans learned early that survival often requires partnerships with entities that think differently than they do. Velterra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the atmospheric converter. Most galactic species considered artificial intelligence research to be fundamentally dangerous, too likely to create entities that would replace their creators. Yet humans had apparently not only solved the AI alignment problem, but had done so in a way that created genuine cooperation. How? Gorthe K. asked bluntly. The same way humans approach most cooperation, AI-7 replied. Through honest communication, shared objectives, and mutual benefit. Humans created us not to serve them, but to work alongside them in addressing challenges too complex for any single type of intelligence. What kind of challenges? Pitheril asked. Admiral Washington activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Let me show you what Earth has faced just in the past century. The display showed a timeline filled with markers that made Velterra's gill slits flutter with disbelief. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, solar storms, gamma-ray burst near misses, and several events marked only as hostile extrasolar contact. Hostile extrasolar contact? She asked. Washington's expression grew grim. Unfortunately, Captain, not all species that reach Earth have peaceful intentions. We've encountered several entities that seemed interested primarily in resources or territory rather than cooperation. What happened to them? They learned that Earth is significantly more dangerous than it appears, AI-7 said with what sounded like satisfaction. Most withdrew after initial contact. A few required more persuasive forms of communication. The implications hung in the air like a storm front. Humans hadn't just survived repeated existential threats from natural disasters. They had faced and apparently defeated hostile alien contact multiple times. How many species have made contact with Earth? Velterra asked. 17 over the past 40 years, Dr. Chen replied. Most were peaceful and beneficial. We've learned a great deal from those encounters. But were hostile enough to require defensive action. Defensive action? Washington and AI-7 exchanged a look that contained layers of communication Velterra couldn't interpret. Captain, Washington said finally, one of the things we've learned is that in an uncertain universe, the best defense against aggression is to ensure that aggression becomes unprofitable very quickly. The holographic display shifted to show what appeared to be a small asteroid field, but Velterra's enhanced vision could detect regular geometric patterns that suggested artificial construction. These are the remains of the last ship that attempted to establish a hostile presence in our system. AI-7 explained matter-of-factly. We've preserved them as both a memorial and a warning. The species they represented have since established peaceful diplomatic relations with Earth. Dr. Crixinel was now fluctuating between colors so rapidly he resembled a strobe light. You destroyed an alien vessel? We defended our planet against a species that had explicitly stated their intention to harvest our biosphere for resources, Washington corrected. The destruction was regrettable, but necessary. But the galactic implications, Pitheril began, were fully considered, Dr. Chen said. We sent detailed reports of each hostile encounter to what we believed were galactic authorities, but never received responses. Eventually, we realized that the communication networks we had accessed were primarily academic rather than governmental. Velterra felt the pieces clicking together in her mind. You've been sending reports to galactic universities rather than the Council. That explains several things, AI-7 noted. We were wondering why galactic civilization seems so theoretical in its approach to practical challenges. Admiral Washington leaned forward. Captain, what we're hoping to understand is how Earth can contribute to galactic civilization in a way that benefits everyone. We have certain capabilities that might be useful, and we're very interested in learning from species with your experience. What kind of capabilities? Gorthay asked warily. The holographic display shifted again, showing what appeared to be a star map with annotations that made no sense to Velterra's understanding of physics. Ships moving faster than light without using hyperspace. Weapons that could affect matter at the quantum level. Defensive systems that seem to manipulate gravity itself. These are some of our current research projects, Dr. Chen explained. We're always working on better ways to protect Earth and its inhabitants from whatever the universe might decide to throw at us next. Ow! Velterra whispered. The same way we've always done everything. AI, Seven replied. By assuming that impossible just means nobody's figured it out yet, and then figuring it out. Velterra stared at the display, showing technologies that redefined what she thought was possible, created by a species that treated galactic civilization as an interesting academic exercise and extinction-level threats as routine engineering challenges. She was beginning to understand why the Council had been so concerned. Humanity wasn't just another galactic species. They were something entirely new, a civilization that had evolved not just to survive in an impossible universe, but to thrive in it. And now they wanted to help. 3 days into the Earth visit, Captain Velterra was beginning to understand that everything she had observed was merely the surface of something far more profound and potentially disturbing. The humans had been unfailingly polite, incredibly accommodating, and utterly transparent about their capabilities, which was exactly what made them so terrifying. The morning had begun with what Dr. Chen cheerfully described as a routine planetary defense drill. Velterra and her team had been invited to observe from what was presented as a safe viewing platform, though she was beginning to suspect that on Earth, safe was a relative concept that assumed exposure to forces that would vaporize most galactic species. The simulation involves a Class 7 extinction event, Admiral Washington explained as they watched the holographic displays. Roughly equivalent to what your databases would classify as a galactic-scale threat requiring evacuation of entire star systems. Dr. Crixenniel's crystalline form had settled into a persistent amber that indicated his systems had given up trying to process the impossibilities they were witnessing. Admiral, you're describing this as a drill. A Class 7 event is theoretical. It represents the absolute upper limit of what the universe could possibly threaten an inhabited world with. On most worlds, yes, AI-7 agreed from its position at a control station that seemed to interface directly with its consciousness. Earth has experienced 3 Class 7 events in the past century. The drill ensures our response times remain optimal. The main display showed Earth's solar system, but overlaid with a defensive network so extensive and sophisticated that it took Velterra several moments to comprehend its scope. Installations that had been completely invisible during their approach were now revealed as planetary-scale engineering projects that should have required the resources of entire galactic civilizations. Initiate scenario, Washington ordered. The display shifted to show a massive object approaching the system, something that registered as roughly the size of Earth's moon, but moving at significant fractions of light speed. According to the simulation parameters, it would impact Earth in approximately 6 hours. That's impossible, Communications Officer Pithero whispered. Nothing that size can move that fast. The energy requirements are significant, Dr. Chun agreed. This scenario is based on the Vega event from 2031. The actual object was somewhat smaller, but the response requirements were similar. Velterra watched in fascination and growing horror as Earth's response unfolded. The first wave of defensive systems activated at the system's outer edge, installations that her ship sensors had completely failed to detect. Massive energy beams reached across interplanetary distances, targeting the incoming object with precision that should have been impossible across such vast spaces. The primary installations can generate roughly 10 to the 22nd watts each, AI-7 explained conversationally. We found that most extinction-level threats can be addressed through the application of sufficient energy at the appropriate time. Dr. Crixenniel's form went completely white. That's That's more energy than most stars produce. Which is why we had to develop alternative energy sources, Dr. Chen replied. Stellar harvesting is useful for routine power needs, but inadequate for emergency response scenarios. The simulation continued, showing layer after layer of defensive systems activating as the object penetrated deeper into the system. Each layer demonstrated technologies that redefined Velterra's understanding of what was physically possible. Gravitational manipulation devices that could alter the trajectory of planetary-scale objects. Temporal distortion fields that gave defenders additional time to respond. Matter converters that could transform incoming threats into useful resources. The final layer, Washington explained as the display showed installations orbiting Earth itself, involves what we call dimensional displacement. If all other options fail, we can temporarily phase the planet out of normal space-time until the threat passes. You can move an entire planet into another dimension. Security Chief Gortheke asked, his scales now showing colors that indicated his people were experiencing what could only be described as philosophical terror. Temporarily, AI-7 confirmed. The energy costs are substantial, and prolonged displacement has ecological side effects, but it's preferable to extinction. Velterra stared at the display, showing Earth's casual ability to survive threats that would obliterate galactic civilization. How many times has Earth used these systems in actual emergencies? The full defensive network has been activated 17 times, Dr. Chen replied, consulting a display that appeared in the air in front of her. Though usually only the outer layers are necessary. The dimensional displacement has only been used twice, once during the Vega event, and once during what we classified as the Alpha Centauri incident. Alpha Centauri incident. Washington's expression grew grim. A species we hadn't encountered before decided to test Earth's defenses by destabilizing our sun. We had to take more direct action in that case. You fought a war against an alien species that could destabilize stars. Pitheril asked in disbelief. It wasn't really a war, AI-7 corrected. Wars imply extended conflict between relatively equal opponents. This was more of a very brief educational exchange. What happened to them? They learned that species which can casually survive stellar instability tend to have developed certain offensive capabilities as well, Dr. Chun said diplomatically. The survivors have since become some of our most valuable allies in monitoring galactic threats. Velterra felt the universe shifting around her understanding. Survivors. We don't believe in genocide, Washington said firmly. But we do believe in making aggressive behavior extremely unprofitable. The species in question lost their ability to destabilize stars and gained a healthy respect for the concept of defensive proportionality. The simulation concluded with the incoming threat successfully neutralized at multiple layers. Its remains converted into raw materials for Earth's construction projects. What struck Velterra most was the casual efficiency of it all. There had been no panic, no desperate last-minute measures, no acceptance of massive casualties as inevitable. Earth had simply applied overwhelming technological superiority to eliminate the threat as if it were a routine maintenance problem. Questions? Dr. Chun asked brightly. Dr. Chun, Velterra said carefully, what would happen if Earth decided that galactic civilization represented a threat? The chamber fell silent. Washington, Chun, and AI-7 exchanged looks that contained layers of communication she couldn't interpret. Captain, AI-7 said finally, that's an interesting question. Could you help us understand what might make galactic civilization threatening from Earth's perspective? Velterra realized she had stumbled into something important. I'm not sure, but you've demonstrated capabilities that could reshape galactic society whether you intended to or not. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. That's something we've considered extensively. Earth has no interest in controlling or destabilizing galactic civilization. But we also can't ignore the fact that many galactic challenges might have solutions that existing civilizations haven't considered. What kind of solutions? Washington activated a new holographic display showing a map of the galaxy with various markers scattered across it. Our monitoring systems have detected several concerning patterns in galactic space. Species going extinct due to challenges that seem imminently solvable. Civilizations stagnating because they've accepted certain limitations as absolute. Resources being wasted because of technological assumptions that don't appear to be accurate. You've been monitoring the entire galaxy? Dr. Crixenale asked. We monitor everything within our detection range. AI, 7 confirmed. Which, admittedly, has grown considerably as our technology advanced. We're currently tracking approximately 47,000 inhabited systems. The casual mention of galaxy-spanning surveillance capabilities sent chills through Velterra's system. Why? Because threats to galactic civilization are threats to Earth, Dr. Chen explained. We've learned that in an interconnected universe, isolation isn't really possible. What affects one species eventually affects everyone. Washington highlighted several markers on the galactic map. For example, there are currently 3 species facing extinction due to stellar instability that could be easily addressed with technologies Earth developed decades ago. For civilizations are stagnating because they believe faster-than-light communication is impossible when the physics are actually quite straightforward. And 7 different regions are dealing with resource shortages that could be solved through matter conversion technologies. You're suggesting you could solve these problems? We're suggesting these problems have solutions. AI, 7 corrected. Whether we personally solve them depends on whether galactic civilization wants our assistance. Velterra stared at the map, showing the accumulated problems of galactic civilization laid out like a repair manual. And if galactic civilization doesn't want your assistance, then we continue monitoring and offer help when it's requested, Dr. Chun said simply. Earth has no interest in imposing solutions on species that prefer their current approaches. But Velterra sensed there was more. Washington's expression grew serious. But we also can't ignore genuine extinction threats, whether the species involved wants our help or not. We've learned that entire civilizations can disappear while their governments are still debating whether the threat is real. You would intervene without permission? We would preserve life? AI, 7 said firmly. Whether that constitutes intervention depends on your definition of sovereignty versus survival. The implications crashed over Velterra like a tidal wave. Humanity wasn't just offering to join galactic civilization. They were presenting themselves as a species capable of solving problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia, with or without official approval. Dr. Chun, she said carefully, what does Earth ultimately want from contact with galactic civilization? Dr. Chun smiled, and Velterra was learning that human smiles could contain entire philosophical frameworks. Captain, Earth wants what we've always wanted, to learn, to grow, and to ensure that intelligence continues to exist in this universe. The galaxy contains thousands of species with unique perspectives, accumulated wisdom, and creative potential. That's an incredibly valuable resource. But you don't need us, Gorth AK observed. Your technology surpasses anything in galactic civilization. Your defensive capabilities exceed our understanding. What will we possibly offer you? Everything, Washington said immediately. Earth's technological capabilities developed in response to specific challenges. But we're still just one species with one perspective shaped by one world's unique environment. Galactic civilization represents thousands of different approaches to existence, problem-solving, and creativity. I.e., sette nodded. Humans are very good at surviving and adapting, but they're not necessarily good at everything. Galactic species have developed arts, philosophies, social structures, and ways of thinking that Earth has never encountered. That diversity of thought is invaluable for addressing challenges we haven't imagined yet. Furthermore, Dr. Chen added, Earth's development has been somewhat specialized by our planet's unique requirements. We've become very good at dealing with immediate existential threats, but galactic civilization has had the luxury of developing in other directions. We need that broader perspective. Velterra found herself facing a realization that would reshape everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. Humanity wasn't seeking to join galactic civilization as junior partners or to conquer it as superior beings. They were offering a partnership between complementary forms of intelligence. Galactic civilizations accumulated wisdom and diversity combined with Earth's practical problem-solving capabilities and refusal to accept limitations. "What would such a partnership look like?" she asked. "That," Dr. Chen replied, "is something we're hoping to figure out together." As Velterra looked around the chamber at the humans and their artificial intelligence partner, she realized that the galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. Whether that change would be beneficial or catastrophic would depend on how well galactic civilization could adapt to the reality of sharing the universe with a species that treated impossibility as a temporary inconvenience. 6 months after Captain Velterra's return to the Galactic Council, the emergency sessions had become a permanent fixture of galactic politics. The great crystalline chamber that had once hosted peaceful discussions of trade agreements and cultural exchanges now buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from thousands of species grappled with the reality of humanity's existence. Velterra stood before the assembly, her report complete, watching as the implications of her findings rippled through galactic civilization like shock waves. The reactions ranged from fascination to terror, with most species struggling somewhere in between. "The humans have responded to our invitation for formal diplomatic contact," announced High Counselor Mordak, his ancient voice carrying undertones that suggested he was still processing the magnitude of the situation. "They will arrive in 3 standard days." A ripple of anxiety passed through the chamber. Over the past months, humanity had been active in galactic affairs, though always with characteristic politeness and apparent concern for galactic sensibilities. 3 species facing extinction from stellar collapse had been quietly saved through the deployment of technologies that stabilized their dying stars. 7 civilizations dealing with resource shortages had discovered asteroid fields appearing in their systems, perfectly positioned for easy mining and filled with exactly the materials they needed. And for different conflicts between species had ended abruptly when both sides received what could only be described as helpful suggestions for resolving their differences. In each case, humanity had acted without fanfare, without seeking credit, and without apparent expectation of compensation. They had simply identified problems and solved them with the casual efficiency that seemed to characterize their approach to everything. "The Viridian Republic wishes to express formal gratitude," announced Ambassador Klexani, her plant-like form rustling with what her species expressed as relief. "The stellar stabilization technology provided by the humans has saved 14 billion lives in our system. We had accepted our extinction as inevitable. The technology was freely shared," added Dr. Vexini, who had been working with human scientists for the past several months, "along with complete technical documentation and offers to provide training for any species interested in learning stellar engineering. They seem genuinely confused by our gratitude, as if preventing extinctions is simply routine courtesy." Ambassador Zekthara, whose predator instincts had proven remarkably accurate in assessing humanity, rose to address the assembly. "The humans have also been active in areas we haven't discussed publicly. My intelligence networks report that they've identified and eliminated 17 separate hostile entities that were operating in galactic space." The chamber fell silent. Hostile entities in galactic space were rare. Most species that achieved interstellar travel had evolved past aggressive behaviors. The idea that 17 different threats had existed without the Council's knowledge was deeply disturbing. "Eliminated how?" asked Counselor Nextheri, his roots rustling with concern. "Non-lethally, in most cases," Zekthara replied. "The hostile entities were convinced that their activities were unprofitable and redirected toward more constructive pursuits. 3 have actually applied for membership in galactic civilization after what they described as educational conversations with human representatives." High Counselor Mordak's expression grew thoughtful. "And the others?" "For chose to relocate to extragalactic space. 2 underwent what humans term involuntary technological regression. They retained their knowledge, but lost their ability to implement harmful technologies. And 8 became what humans classify as constructive allies, though the details of that transition remain unclear. The implications hung in the air like a storm front. Humanity hadn't just been solving problems. They'd been quietly reshaping the galactic security environment without anyone realizing it was happening. Dr. Vexini, Mordax said, "What is your assessment of human intentions?" The xenolinguist's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue that indicated profound uncertainty. High Counselor, after months of interaction with human scientists, diplomats, and artificial intelligences, I believe humanity operates from a framework that is fundamentally different from anything we've encountered. Explain. They appear to view the universe as inherently dangerous and unpredictable, which means their default assumption is that any intelligent species they encounter will eventually face existential challenges. From their perspective, helping other species survive isn't altruism. It's prudent resource management. Ambassador Quintera's mandibles clicked nervously. Resource management? They consider intelligence itself to be the galaxy's most valuable resource, Vexini explained. Every species represents unique problem-solving capabilities, creative perspectives, and accumulated knowledge. From humanity's viewpoint, allowing intelligent species to go extinct due to solvable problems is essentially the same as destroying irreplaceable scientific equipment. The analogy sent chills through the assembly. Humanity saw galactic civilization not as a collection of sovereign entities, but as a vast repository of intellectual resources that needed to be preserved and maintained. "They're treating us like a library," whispered Ambassador Yathala, her ethereal harmonics carrying undertones of existential dread. "Not just a library," Vexini corrected. "Like a research team. They seem to believe that the galaxy's accumulated intelligence represents the best chance for solving whatever challenges the universe might present in the future." What challenges could possibly require the combined intelligence of thousands of species? Asked Counselor Nextheri. Before Vexini could respond, the chamber's communication systems activated, displaying a message that made everyone present understand that humanity had been listening to their deliberations. "Greetings, honored counselors," came the familiar voice of Dr. Sarah Chun. "I apologize for interrupting, but we thought you might find recent developments relevant to your discussions." The main display shifted to show a stellar map that extended far beyond the galaxy's borders. Points of light marked what appeared to be other galaxies, but several were pulsing with colors that indicated something was fundamentally wrong with them. "Our long-range monitoring systems have detected what appears to be systematic intelligence extinction events in neighboring galaxies," Dr. Chen continued. "Something is targeting civilized worlds with technologies that we're still working to understand." The chamber erupted in sounds of shock and alarm from dozens of species. The idea of threats operating on intergalactic scales was beyond anything galactic civilization had ever considered. "The phenomenon appears to be moving in this direction." AI-7's voice joined the transmission. "Current estimates suggest it will reach our galaxy in approximately 2,000 to 4,000 years, depending on whether it maintains consistent expansion patterns." Admiral Washington appeared on the display, his expression carrying the grim seriousness that humans seem to reserve for genuine threats. "We want to share this information because it affects all of us. Whatever's causing these extinction events represents a threat that no single species, including humanity, could address alone." Dr. Chen's image returned to the display. "This is why we've been so interested in preserving and strengthening galactic civilization. The galaxy's combined intelligence, creativity, and problem-solving capabilities may be our only chance of developing effective responses to whatever we're facing." High Counselor Mordak found his voice after several moments of stunned silence. "Dr. Chun, are you suggesting that humanity's assistance to galactic species has been preparation for defending against this threat?" "Not preparation," Chun corrected. "Insurance. We're dealing with something that has apparently succeeded in eliminating intelligence from multiple galaxies. The only advantage we have is forewarning and the combined capabilities of every intelligent species in our galaxy. The display shifted to show technical data that made Dr. Vexini's crystalline form flicker with colors indicating she was processing information at the limits of her capabilities. Our analysis suggests that the threat operates by identifying and exploiting weaknesses in technological development patterns. AI, 7 explained. Species that follow predictable development paths seem particularly vulnerable. Galactic civilization's diversity of approaches to technology and problem-solving may be its greatest defense. Furthermore, Admiral Washington added, the threat appears to target civilizations that have achieved stability and predictability. Societies that have eliminated internal conflict and standardized their approaches to challenges seem to be the first to fall. Ambassador Zekthara felt his predator instincts screaming warnings. You're suggesting that galactic civilization's greatest strength, our peaceful cooperation, makes us vulnerable? We're suggesting that monocultures, even peaceful ones, are inherently fragile, Dr. Chen replied. Diversity of thought, approach, and capability is essential for surviving unknown challenges. This is why humanity values galactic civilization so highly. Velterra understood the implications immediately. You need us to remain diverse, to maintain our different approaches and perspectives, because you don't know which ones will be essential for survival. Exactly, Chen confirmed. Earth's approach to problems involves applying massive force and creative stubbornness until something works. That's useful for certain types of challenges. But other problems might require the Aquari's deep-time thinking, or the Botanical Commonwealth's distributed intelligence, or the Seraphim Collective's harmonic mathematics. Or AI, 7 added, solutions we haven't imagined yet, developed by species we haven't met yet, using principles none of us currently understand. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of humanity's perspective became clear. They weren't trying to control or reshape galactic civilization. They were trying to preserve and strengthen the galaxy's intellectual diversity as preparation for challenges that might require capabilities no single species possessed. The diplomatic delegation, Mordax said slowly, is arriving to formalize this partnership? To offer it, Dr. Chen corrected. Earth cannot and will not impose solutions or alliances on unwilling species. But we can offer our capabilities to any civilization interested in mutual cooperation for galaxy-wide survival. As the transmission ended, Velterra looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. In a matter of months, humanity had transformed from an unknown curiosity into the galaxy's self-appointed guardians against threats that operated on scales beyond normal comprehension. Whether galactic civilization was ready for that partnership remained to be seen. But, as Velterra considered the alternative, facing intergalactic extinction events without humanity's casual ability to solve impossible problems, she realized they might not have a choice. The Deathworlders had emerged not as conquerors or saviors, but as something far more complex. Partners in survival who understood that in an infinite universe filled with infinite dangers, the only rational response was infinite adaptation. The galaxy would never be the same. Whether that was a blessing or a catastrophe would depend on how well thousands of species could learn to think like humans, assuming that impossible just meant nobody had figured it out yet. In 3 days, they would find out if galactic civilization was ready for that challenge.